me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. Okay. So is it normal, Scott, that I wouldn't see anybody else but you and I? Okay, good. Sorry. Sorry guys, just trying to get my tech hat on. So we're going to talk about a subject that I've been training on for quite some time now. I'll introduce myself first to you. My name is Kelly Canzone. I'm an LCSW, so I'm a clinical social worker. I'm also the CEO of Tri-County Behavioral Care. I've been a clinical social worker working privately for 26 years with children, teens, and families. It's been my primary work. I'm also a professor at Rutgers University. I'm also a graduate of Rutgers University. And one of my passions is really to help families change the trajectory of their lives with their kids and, as spouses each other. So it's very hard to parent. I'm going to be totally honest with you. I'm a mom of 2 kids. I have a 16-year-old son who's 11 weeks about to be 17, and I have a 12-year-old daughter who I think in 11 weeks she's going to be 25, it feels like. So this is a topic that I not only come from professionally, but personally as well. My husband and I have been married for 17 years. That's a job in and of itself to stay married these days. So I am happy to report that we're still employed as a husband and wife. And also he's been a teacher for 28 years. He retires in 2 years. So I also understand what it's like to, for our children in their school day as well. So my goal when I'm talking about this topic is pretty simple. When we're raising our kids, and especially as they get into their teen years, my goal when I'm working with families is to be able to have you want your child to come back for Thanksgiving dinner after they've left the nest. That's my goal, is to make sure that we have a relationship enough with each other that, by the time you leave my home, that you are not only a functional adult, but that I actually still like you and I want to see you, on different holidays. And then my second goal is to really bring some sense of normalcy to the process of parenting our kids. I always find it really fascinating that when I'm talking to another mom or another parent, and I sort of start talking about some things going on in my house, when they start to talk about the things going on in their house, and it's really similar to my house, I start to feel like, oh, thank goodness, right? Like, thank goodness I am not the only person going through this, because it's like really hard, right? It's really hard. And I don't know about you guys, but I totally think our parents had it easier than we have it now. And I'll talk about a couple of reasons why I think that's the case. But let's kind of start to go through some of the slides. So I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully I do it the right way. So this is hang on, let me see if I can do a different view on this slideshow. There we go. All right. So as I mentioned, we're going to talk about strengthening your relationship with your teen. This presentation really should be called How to Like Your Teen in 4 years from now and Want Them to Come Home for Thanksgiving. But for today, we'll call it Tools for Strengthening Your Relationship with Your Teen. As I talked about a little bit, I have 26 years experience. I also believe that mental health should really be accessible to everyone. It's 2023, and the fact that people are still telling me that there's a 5 to 6 month waiting list sometimes for therapists really shouldn't be that way. So one of the reasons I started Tri-County Behavioral Care 10 years ago was to do just that, was to bring access to really good care for all people in all communities. So the first thing we're going to talk about is being honest and open. When I've done something wrong as a parent, the best thing I can do for my kids is to literally say, you know what, last night I totally lost my mind when I was, making dinner, and I yelled at you guys a little bit and I'm sorry for that. And I messed up and I'm sorry that that happened. And here's what I learned from it. Being honest and open with my kids allows them to be honest and open with me. And if I'm not going to share my faults and I'm not going to share, my struggles as an adult, they're certainly not going to share their struggles as kids. We have to really create an open, honest space in our house, where it's okay to fall down. It's okay to mess up. It's okay to be able to apologize to, and come back to open arms from our family. It's hard on the outside world because not everyone is open to, accepting apologies and things like that. So that's one of the things, the gifts I give my kids is that when they have to say they're sorry for something, I welcome them back with open arms, and vice versa. When I have to say I'm sorry to them for something, they welcome me back with open arms. And so creating that open, honest space in our house is important. It's also important that we have an open, honest space with the people, other adults around us, whether that be your partner, your spouse, your own parents, like whoever is in your home space or in your kids' space. You also need to have really open, honest communication with those people so that you can model for your kids and your teens what it looks like to have those adult relationships. One of the struggles I've always had as an adult was that I tend to want to kind of like go to people and say, hey, I'm feeling a certain way about something in our relationship. And I've learned pretty quickly as an adult that not everybody does that thing where they're kind of open and honest with each other. So I tend to try to surround myself with people who I can be that authentic self with, because I want my kids to see those relationships. But sometimes as adults, if we're mad at person A, we might go to person B, C, D, and E and tell them we're mad at person A, but we won't really talk about it with person A. And our kids then see that, right? Our kids watch us have these relationships as adults. So I've really made it a point in my adult life to go to person A and say, hey, I'm upset with our relationship right now, or I'm upset with something you did, or I think I might have done something that upset you, so that my kids can really see that direct communication. Kind of taking that a step further, the other thing I definitely would recommend not doing is talking to your kids about your spouse or your partner. If I have a problem with my partner or my spouse, I go to him directly so that my kids can see that direct communication. I don't pull my kids into that. That's really difficult. I know that there might be people on this call today that have, maybe a separation situation or a divorce situation, co-parenting, and that can be really difficult. But the less and less you can bring your kids into the actual relationship versus model a healthy relationship, the better that you will be. Even if that means kind of not having communication with somebody that is not the most positive person in your life, right? So if you are having a difficult time communicating about co-parenting, maybe not having as many conversations as you can in front of your kids. And I think that would be super helpful. When you create that open and honest space in your home and with your kids, and they see that you can have open, honest communication with the people around you, they will start to expect that in their own life and in their relationship. When you create that open and honest space and you model those open and honest communication patterns, your kids are more likely to come to you with stuff that's really hard, because they're not going to expect you to fix the hard stuff. They just expect you to be able to hear it and comfort them through it and support them through it. Sometimes they have to make their own decision through those hard times. They don't necessarily need your answer, but they do need your ear and they do need your support. Next up is being authoritative, not authoritarian. Now, last night, you're going to find throughout this presentation, I've got a lot of anecdotes about my own house throughout this presentation. Last night, my daughter did not want to eat the broccoli on her plate. And I said, you have to eat the broccoli on her plate. And she said, I do not have to eat the broccoli on your plate. And I said, you do. I said, if you don't eat the broccoli on your plate, there will be a consequence for you not eating the broccoli on your plate. And of course, I didn't say it like I'm saying it now, right? It was more like, you better eat that broccoli or you're getting your phone taken away. And she came back to me and I came back to her. So by all means, it didn't sound like I was Mary Poppins having this conversation with my 12-year-old. Authoritarian would be, eat that broccoli now because I said so, which, by the way, there is a place for that, right? It doesn't always have to sound like Mary Poppins. You have to eat your broccoli because I said so, because I'm the mom. That's a thing, okay? When you're working with teens, it becomes a very different landscape. When you're working with teens, authoritative means you sort of work out the problem together. Like, all right, you've got to eat the broccoli because it's healthy for you. And it's my job as your mom to keep you healthy and make sure that you don't get sick because you've got to go to school tomorrow. You don't want to eat the broccoli. Tell me where we're at. Like, how are we going to compromise on this? And there's maybe not a compromise sometimes. But if you can come to the table as a parent, 90% of the time being authoritative and not authoritarian, you will win more times with your kid. And what I mean by that is, if every single time you're showing up to a negotiation with your teen by saying, I'm the parent, that's why, they're going to shut you out. And I want you to think about yourselves as if you're at work. If your boss just kept coming to you and saying, do this because I said so, you wouldn't show up. You show up because you get something out of it. You get a paycheck, you get a raise, you get, whatever it is from your job. There's some satisfaction you get. And if you don't get that satisfaction, you switch jobs. Authoritarian bosses never do well with their employees. I can promise you everyone on this call would probably raise their hand and have a great story to tell me about an authoritarian boss that they couldn't stand, right? Now, the thing is, they're the boss. They technically can tell you what to do, but nobody really feels great when the person does that. Your teens are sort of the same way in that they're starting to express themselves on a higher level. They're starting to have higher level thoughts. They're starting to have more independent thoughts. And if we come at them with an authoritarian parenting style, we're either going to do one of two things. They're either going to become really aggressive toward us, or they're going to become totally dependent on us. Because in one respect, they think we know everything and they want to know everything, or we know everything and they don't know everything, so they have to rely on us. So this is where you see authoritarian parenting styles that kids either can't leave their parents because they don't feel confident going into the world because somebody else was always in charge, or they go so far away from their parents because they felt like they could never be in charge because their parents were always in charge. An authoritative parenting style is more of a negotiation. It's more of a conversation. If you take your car out after 11 o'clock again, I'm going to take your keys away. How do you want to handle this? Because if you get your keys taken away, I'm not driving you where you need to go. There's going to be a consequence to what you did. That is authoritative, okay? I want you to think about, if you could take 100% of your parenting time and you could break it up into how many times you say, right, I'm the parent, that's why, or go to your room, that's why, versus I don't like what you did, let's talk about it. I don't like your behavior, let's talk about it. If you increased that percentage by 10%, what would your house be like? What would your relationship with your teen be like? So what that means is, if you're 50% of the time screaming at your kid and 50% of the time having a conversation with them, if you increase that 10%, you went to a 60-40, would you feel better? The answer is yes. Would your teen feel better? The answer is yes. When we're talking about kind of maneuvering our parenting or parenting coaching, anything like that, we're never looking for 100%. Like, I'm not expecting anyone on this call to go from 50% to 100. I'm looking for you to go from 50% to 55, right? Because we can't make these changes overnight. It has to take some time, and we have to build the muscle of doing something different than we're doing right now. Harm reduction versus zero tolerance. Let's think about what's going to happen when you go to prom weekend instead of you're not going to prom weekend. Or if you go to prom weekend, you can stay there, but you're not sleeping there. Zero tolerance means we do have to give our kids some latitude to make some crappy decisions, right? That's how kids learn, as unfortunate as it is, right? I know some adults that still learn that way. But the reality is harm reduction is, let me talk to you about why prom weekend's not the best idea and why coming home after being down there for the day is a better idea than me renting you a hotel room. Harm reduction versus zero tolerance. That opens you up to a great conversation with your kids about what you know is going to happen at the Jersey Shore after the prom and what the vision of their life looks like if those decisions go the wrong way. So your kids might be looking at colleges right now, like maybe you have a junior like I do, or maybe you even have a sophomore and they're looking at going down the shore prom weekend. And this is just an example. And again, it's an example because it's where I am in my personal life. You know, if you've got some vision for your life, let's talk about harm reduction. How do you make some decisions and how do you become a little bit more independent from me while not throwing away all the hard work you've done for the last 3 years of your life? Or how do you not make decisions that are going to impact you the next 3 years of your life negatively? Harm reduction sounds like, I know that math stinks and I know you don't want to do it, but we do have to think about what your life's going to look like after your senior year. Why do you get through math? Why do you have to kind of suck it up and do it? And if you don't want to do it, what's our other option, right? Those conversations are super important. And again, that really correlates between that authoritarian and authoritative. Don't believe everything you read and hear. This is an interesting one. I sort of struggled with this a little bit, putting it in the presentation. I'm a therapist. It's a little hard to be a mom and a therapist because I know stuff and sometimes I don't want to know stuff. I have a couple of friends of mine who are, you know, on the police forces in different towns in the area. You know, some of them are detectives, and we sort of talk about how difficult it is to parent knowing what we know, you know, in a different way than other people in different fields, right? When you see don't believe everything you read and hear, what comes to mind is twofold. The first one is social media. I've done a lot of soul searching in the last year about social media, and I'm on social media, and my son does have a social media account. And I always think it's really interesting because I see a lot of things on social media that look like people are living these sort of amazing lives, right? And, you know, they're not having any trouble with their teen and everything looks grand. And, you know, look at this great touchdown and, you know, kind of all this stuff, right? And I sort of, there comes a point where when you're watching this, it reminds me of like vacation pictures, right? When people go on vacation, what do they post on their social media account? They post like a cute picture and everybody's smiling in it. What they don't post is they don't post like 30 seconds before that when, like, you know, mom was like telling someone she was going to whack them with a shoe, or, you know, like, get over here, get in this picture. And she's sort of like frantically yelling, make, you know, look happy, smile, stop hitting your brother, all that kind of stuff, right? So I look at these Facebook posts and I look at this, you know, Instagram, whatever, social media posts. And it's sort of like, it's really all kind of fake, right? Like, you don't get to see the argument I had with my husband. You get to see my anniversary picture, which is like 20, you know, 17 years, look at us. You know, you don't get to see like, you know, who's picking up the kids? I need milk. The cat needs food. You know, why is your mom still here? You know, or, you know, your dad's coming to visit this weekend, whatever. Like, you don't see my hectic life all week long. You see this great picture of me with my husband smiling at, you know, some restaurant for our anniversary. I've started to really get real about what we see on social media every day. It's made up. It's not real. There are some kids that are doing phenomenal things and we never hear about it, right? There are some kids getting B's, and that's really awesome for them, but they're not making high honor rolls, so we don't see that, right? We don't see their name on some list somewhere. But man, they're really getting good grades for them, and they're getting all B's. We don't see that. And just because your kid shows up on an honor roll list doesn't mean they're really that nice of a child, right? It means they got good grades. It means they were able to study, right? So don't believe everything you read and hear. The other thing I really want you to do is be very discerning about things that you read and hear about parenting. I'm of the belief that I don't care what anyone else is doing with their kids. I do what I do with my kids. So I parent the way I parent, not because my neighbor parents that way, not because her neighbor parents that way, and not because any of my friends parent the way they parent. I parent the way I parent because it's right for my family. It doesn't matter to me whose kids are going to prom weekend. It doesn't matter to me whose kids have Snapchat. It doesn't matter to me whose kids have the newest iPhone. I just don't fundamentally care. And the reason I don't care is because that's not an honest representation of parenting. I do what I do, and I parent the way I parent based on, things I read about good parenting, not other people's styles of parenting. Like, I don't take advice from other people on parenting, to be quite honest with you. I read a lot about parenting. And I'm a therapist and I teach people about parenting, and I still read about parenting because I'm a therapist to teenagers. I've never been a mom to teenagers, and that's a very different thing. And I've got to be able to be both in my life. When I start to read about parenting and I read about this authoritative versus authoritarian harm reduction, like, I still take this all in as a parent, even though I'm teaching this course to you guys. I still apply this to myself as a parent. And I think it's really important that you have conviction about your parenting and that you take the time to figure out what kind of parent you want to be. Just because you were raised that way doesn't mean it was the right way. Just because your neighbor does it doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. What's right for your house needs to be right for your house, obviously within the confines of what's legal, right, of parenting. And having some conviction about that allows you as a parent to not waver from your ideals. And I think that's really important when your kids see that you believe in what you believe in because you've spent the time to really figure out what kind of a parent you want to be. And that's really respected. I think kids really respect that. I have a rule in my house that I will pick up your phone and look at it whenever I need to. I don't actually enforce that. And so let me talk a little bit about that. Because both my kids have cell phones. My 12-year-old has a cell phone and my 16-year-old obviously has a cell phone. I monitor all of their activity. I have a parental control on my daughter's cell phone. I also have parental controls on my son's cell phone because I have to turn it off at some point or it will literally go off all night. The notifications on his phone will go off all night. I also don't want him on it during school, so I have his phone turned off from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. I do that because I don't want him on his phone. And quite frankly, I don't think even most adults cannot navigate their phone and put it down. Like, a lot of us are on our phones too much. So I just don't want that distraction for him at school. I don't want that distraction for her at school. They take their cell phones to school, but I just don't want them on it. I'm like one of the phone numbers that they can call if they need to that will break through that. But generally, like, all their notifications are shut off during the day. Truthfully, if either one of my kids said that they need their cell phone during the day, there's really no reason why they would need their cell phone at school during the day. Well, my friends are on their phones. Okay, I'm sorry that that's the case, but I'm not turning your phone on for you to have it during the day. My son knows that I will pick up his phone and I will read it if I need to, if I feel like there's something going on. I think because both my kids know that I don't actually have to, if that makes any sense. When people come over my house, I know who's there. If somebody walks in with a backpack, I ask what's in it. If my son's going to someone's house, I ask who's there. Are their parents home? Like, I just ask questions because I want to know. And at the end of the day, he gives me pushback. Like, my son's a really great kid. He gives me pushback. He's 16. He doesn't want to answer my questions anymore. What I say when he's giving me that pushback is the following: it is my job on this earth to keep you safe. That is literally my job. And I will do that job until you are no longer living in this house. And I will do that job well enough so that you know how to do it for yourself when you're not living in this house. But while you're in this house, it's my job to keep you safe. Now, what you didn't hear me say is it's my job to put the rules in place. It's my job to parent you. It's my job to, you're going to follow my rules if you live in this house. Because the reality is my rules are about keeping them safe. My rules are about keeping them healthy. My rules are about making sure we have a really happy, healthy family. I don't have rules just to have rules. There's a purpose behind them. So I literally say things like that. It's my job to keep you safe, and I'm going to do that job to the best of my ability. And you're not always going to like what comes out of that, but it's still my job. In fact, if I didn't do that job well and I didn't keep you safe, I could actually be arrested for it, right? Because I'm not making that up. It's my job to monitor and make sure you're safe. And it's my job to do that while also respecting that you are no longer 5 years old and you have friends and you're going to have conversations with those friends that I'm not going to be privy to. And that's totally okay. But when I feel as a parent like I need to get involved in something, I'm going to, because that's my job. And let me tell you like how that looks different from 17 to 12. At 17, it looks like, where are you going? Who's going to be there? How long will you be there? Are the parents home? Why did Eddie just bring a backpack in my house? What's in the backpack? There's something clanking inside of it, right? That's my job for my 17-year-old. My 12-year-old is, what kind of sites were you on today? What are you looking at on your phone? Who are you talking to? How are your friends doing? The conversation with my 12-year-old looks different than my 17-year-old. My 17-year-old needs a lot more freedom than my 12-year-old. My 12-year-old does not need the freedom my 17-year-old has. She still has to ask me to install new stuff on her cell phone. Why? Because she installed Instagram on her phone when she was 11, and she did not make it a private account. So it was a public account. I did not know either what I was doing. So she downloads Instagram at 11 years old. Within 3 hours, a 45-year-old man was following her on Instagram. Those are just, I would consider myself a pretty on top of it parent. And my 11-year-old ended up with some adult man following her on Instagram. Obviously, she came to me and said, Mom, there's a weird guy who just asked to friend me on Instagram, follow me. And so we closed her account. And it took me a year to even say to her, yeah, you can have an account again. And I was able to ask a friend of mine, how to make the account private and all that kind of stuff. And, it's been fine. But now I can see what's on her phone. Like, if you're not doing that with your kids' devices, you're going to be really surprised what they're looking at. 12-year-olds can't handle a phone. Like, I hate to sort of be the bearer of bad news on this one, but they just can't. And what I mean by that is they don't know what not to click on and what to click on. Like, a 17-year-old kind of knows I shouldn't click on that, but a 12-year-old doesn't. And a 12-year-old, they'll click on something and not really know how they got there. A 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old, whatever. And then the algorithm starts to pick up what they're looking at, and then we'll just give them more of what they just looked at. It's literally my job to make sure her phone doesn't go in the wrong direction. So she has to ask the parental permission for her to download anything new on that phone. There is no getting a new app on that phone without me knowing what it is. So monitor and supervise parental sensitivity. I'm not trying to take your freedom away from you, but again, it is my job to make sure you're safe and healthy. Man, this one's hard to do sometimes. Accentuate the positive. What do I mean by accentuate the positive? I don't mean like the Mary Poppins where, oh my gosh, you put that dish away. So awesome. Like, I don't walk around my house like that. I don't talk like that. It's not how I talk in my normal day, everyday life. Like, I'm from Jersey. We don't talk like that. But the reality is when my kids put away their dishes, both my kids have one chore every night, and it's my daughter does the silverware and my son does the dishes. And honestly, it's broken up that way because my daughter's short and she can't reach where the dishes go. So my son does the dishes. And then my daughter is also in charge of feeding the animals every night. So when they do that chore, I say to them every time, thanks for doing your chore. Thanks for doing your job. Thanks for putting that away. If they do something that warrants that, I say, thanks for doing that. That's what I normally do in my personal life, though. Like if somebody held the door for me and I was walking into Burger King and somebody held the door for me, I would say, oh, thanks for doing that. I treat my kids the same way, but I want them to know that I actually do appreciate that they did what they did. Yes, it's their chore. Yes, they're getting paid for it. Yes, they should be doing it, but there's no reason why I shouldn't say great job. My daughter had a C in math. She pulled it up to a B. Great job. Do I want her to have an A? Yeah. Did she have an A last semester? Yeah. But did she pull a B up from a C and learn some lessons there? She did. And I think that warrants us being able to give some positive reinforcement to our kids. There's a lot of parenting that we have to say no. There's a lot of my day with my kids. There's a lot of my life with my kids where I have to say, no, don't do that. All that kind of stuff. I've got to really work in those moments where I say, great job. Glad you pulled that C up. I was so proud of you that you talked to your friends so nicely the other day. Because by the way, there's going to be like 6 times during the day that I've got to say, like, stop doing that. Don't do that. Pick that up. Stop talking to your brother like that. Don't hit her. You know what I mean? Like, whatever that is. My day really is like 22 things of like being a referee. Once or twice, it makes me feel better to say good job. I know it makes them feel better, right? But it definitely makes me feel better too, because I think at the end of the day, parenting, as I started this whole presentation off by saying, is hard. It's really hard. There's like a manual for it, but gosh, even the manual sometimes doesn't work. I think being able to have those moments where you say good job or you say I'm proud of you, when it's something even minuscule like putting away their dishes, it just makes the whole interaction with your kids go better. I'm going to be honest with you, kids who are involved in extracurricular activities are just a little happier. They have an outlet away from the house. They don't come home and sit in their bedroom. They are distracted from their phones a little bit more than kids that don't have anything going on after school. My son does not have a winter sport that he plays. And I told him, you've got to do something. You're either going to, again, he's 17. You're either going to work or you're going to join ski club or something. Like, you're not coming home and sitting from 2 o'clock to 8 o'clock every day. A couple of things happen when your kids are involved in extracurricular activities. Now, it doesn't obviously have to be anything that's sports related. There's a ton of stuff that kids get involved in schools. My daughter is involved. My daughter is an equestrian. She rides at a barn, but her extracurricular activities for school help her stay connected to her friends at school, help her stay connected to teachers at school. And she's part of the not child studies team, the oh my gosh, like the political thing in school. I can't think of the word off the top of my head. I'll think about it in a second. And my son does FBLA and DECA, student council. My daughter's part of student council. And she's like, she doesn't do anything. She doesn't like have like a, she's not like a president of student council, but once in a while she stays after school and she's involved in some kind of extracurricular activity. It really builds character. It helps her to do something at school that's really positive. It makes school a more positive environment for her because she's involved in something outside of just doing her math homework. Now, when we were younger, we would come home from school and we would find neighborhood kids and we would go play. That doesn't happen. I don't know why it doesn't happen, but in this seminar today, in this talk today, I can't really fix why kids aren't playing with each other after school, because they should be, but they're not, right? But there are opportunities for kids to get involved with their peer groups after school. I will promise you, if your kid is not involved in an extracurricular activity, getting them involved in something will make you and them happier. A, it's less time they're spending inside. B, it's less time they're spending in your house getting something dirty or messed up that you've got to clean. And they come in the door and they're fulfilled because they were doing something that has to do with a shared a shared interest with other kids. And I think it's really important. This is an interesting number 8, encourage flexibility in gender roles and behavior. Oops, sorry. I don't know how to go back, but encourage flexibility in gender roles. Teens these days, kids in this generation, there is gender fluidity going on among teens. And you can either take the stance of, and I'm talking merely right now as a clinical social worker. You can take the stance of not in my house, or you can take the stance of, if my child is going through this, I'll support them, even though I do not know how. Our generation, I mean, the generation before this one, we didn't have this. And I'm saying that now as a mom, but I'm also saying that as a counselor. When I first started as a therapist 20-something years ago, the idea of gender fluidity among the level that we see it right now was not a thing. Now, that doesn't mean it wasn't there. It was just not talked about. It was not mainstream. It was not something that teens were even open about discussing. Teens now are. They just are. And we're either going to get on board with that or we're not. And I promise you, if we look historically at most things that teens pushed forward and adults pushed back on, the teens won. Okay. I mean, we can literally go back to 1970 and look at, anything that teens did between the ages of 17 and 25, and the adults didn't win, right? They were, the music changed, the gender roles changed, women went back to work, and there was a whole pile of adults that were literally saying, this isn't right. We're sort of in that place again where there's a whole pile of adults saying this isn't right, and there's a bunch of kids going, this is normal to us. I don't know that I can speak to this. I don't know that I can speak to gender fluidity as if I were a teen and as if I understood it like I was a teen. But I can tell you as a counselor, if we would just accept that this is a thing, not all of our kids are going to go through it, but it's a thing that teens go through and they talk about openly. And if we don't get on board with that, we're going to be very much left behind in the conversation, and then we're really not going to know what to do. And it really breaks down communication between one generation and the next, meaning I don't know what gender fluidity rules are. I don't know what my kids' thoughts about it are, but I want to know what their thoughts about it are. I don't want to tell them my judgment about it. I don't want to tell them what I think about it, but I want to understand it because this is evolving, and this is evolving beyond me. Address any abusive or inappropriate language. What does this mean? This means I don't let my kids talk back to me. I don't care who they are. I don't care who they think they are. I do not let my children talk back to me. Why? Because I don't let my husband talk back to me. I don't let my kids talk back to me. I don't talk back to them. If I say something to someone in my family that is not respectful, the first thing I do is say that I'm sorry. There's plenty of opportunity outside of your family for people to talk badly to each other. There's plenty of people that are going to talk badly to your kids, to you, your spouse on a daily basis. People that are just unhappy, right, in their lives, and they kind of come at us in our everyday. There's really no need for that in our home. That's supposed to be the safe spot. That's supposed to be the safe place. That's supposed to be the place where when we mess up, we are able to say, I'm sorry, and we don't treat each other with disrespect. I can promise you one thing on number 9. And I've seen this for 20 plus years in my practice. If there is abuse in your home, if there is inappropriate yelling, screaming, disrespecting each other in your home, if you are disrespecting your kids verbally, they will disrespect you. It's just that simple. And if you don't disrespect your kids and each other, you're able to say to them, we don't do that here. I don't know who you're speaking to right now, but that's not how I speak to you. And that's not how you're going to speak to me. But at the end of the day, you can't tell your teen or your 12-year-old who thinks she's 25 for that matter, that you can't talk to me this way, but I can talk to you any way I want. Because that's just not true. I can't walk down the street and scream at someone and expect that they're going to receive that well. We have to set a firm, clear message that the only thing that happens in this house is respect. And I promise you, you'll get more of it back when you give more of it out. And there's one thing that I hear parents say a lot. Well, my kid doesn't respect me, so why should I respect them? And the answer is very simple, because you're the model of respect. You're the person that sets the tone in your house for how people are treated. And just because you disrespect me does not give me the right to disrespect you. It gives me the right to defend myself. And it gives me the right to tell you that I don't like what you're doing or talking to me, but it doesn't give me the right to disrespect you back. All right, my favorite term of 2023 is, at 2022 and 2023, is lawnmower parents. Lawnmower parents, when their kids step into some high weeds and the grass doesn't feel so great, they jump in front of their kid and they mow the lawn so that everything is perfect. This sort of replaces the helicopter parents of 2020 and 2021. Helicopter parents were like doing everything for their kids. Lawnmower parents are now making sure their kids can do everything with a really beautiful lawn, right? So you can step on the grass by yourself because I've made sure the lawn is perfect and picture perfect. Be an active participant in your kids' lives without doing it for them. I'll come back to this point that I said earlier. Kids have to learn by making mistakes. It's the most unfortunate part of parenting. And we can throw a mattress under them. We can throw a pillow under them. We can try as hard as we can to make our kids make the right decisions, but it's just the way they learn. It's the way their brains are formed, right? Being an active parent means I'm constantly in conversation with my kids, but I'm not doing it for them. My son recently got a job, like a summer job at like a landscape shop. They've like got a flower shop that is attached to a landscape company. And I drove him to the place and I stayed in the car and he went in and said, I'd like an application, for a job. And the lady that runs the flower shop came out to the car and she knocked on my window and I rolled the window down and she said, she said, he got the job. I said, okay. She said, he's filling it out right now. She said, he's getting the job because he's the only teenager that came in here by himself. She said, I have had 6 moms come to my flower shop this week and ask for applications for their kids. And the kid fills it out and the mom brings it back to the flower shop for their kid. She's like, I've never even met 6 of these kids. Your kid is the only one that walked in. Okay. I don't want to go to the flower shop. Like, I didn't do that to make my kid independent. I did that because I don't want to get my kid's first job for it. I want him to go in and fill out an application. Why? One reason, because I don't want my kid living in the basement for the rest of his life. I want him to know how to be independent enough to go in and get his first job. I will not get the first job for him. Even if he doesn't get it, I can't be there every single step of the way. I want you to start to think about these places in your kids' lives where you can give them more independence. You can teach them how to be more independent, like making their own breakfast, like making their own dinner, like potentially making dinner once a week for the family. They're not going to live under your roof forever. They're going to have to learn some of these skills. Why not do it while they're with you? So now is the portion of our time together where I get to open it up for questions. So I know we started a little bit later, so I want to make sure we have enough time for anybody who might have questions. Scott, is there anything I need to do to my screen?
Nope, you can do anything like that. Any of the parents that want to ask questions can just raise their hand. I will give you access to the panel, and then we can go and everybody can hear the questions. So as soon as
Awesome.
anybody's ready, I'm ready to roll. I know there was a question at the very beginning, but then the hand went down, so we could sit and
Okay.
talk. And I would say, you know, if as we're waiting for questions, one question I might have is, and for the parents is, you know, some of these are awesome strategies, but how do you start to change if you were doing some of the things that we said we probably shouldn't, or try to, you know, change the tide of the relationship that you currently have? I know you have juniors, so it's tough, you know, if you try to start something like this today with a 16 or 17-year-old. So what recommendation would you do to, you know, sort of slow it down and try to take on some of these qualities?
So the first thing I would do is I would literally, I'd sit down with them. I mean, listen, my son and I have been in a place before where, you know, our relationship was not exactly where I wanted it to be. And he was sort of snapping at me for a little bit and I was snapping at him. And I just kind of got to a place where I was like, I got to do something different. Like, I don't know why this is happening, but it's got to change, right? Like we get to these places in all relationships. What I would say is to do the same thing you would do with your friend, right? Is to sit down and say, like, I don't really like where our relationship's at. I don't like our interaction. Like, I feel like you see me coming and I see you coming, and I want to be able to like you, right? I want you to be able to like have a relationship with me. So I feel like the very first thing you could do is to sit down and say, I don't like where things are at. And really create that open, honest communication. The other thing you could do if you don't feel comfortable with that is pick one, right? There were 9 things on that screen. Pick one. Don't let the 9 overwhelm you. The 9 are just recommendations, right?
And what would you say? And that's
I looked up the other day,
yeah.
good sources of protein. Say again?
I was to say, if you know, looking at the list, if you had to identify one topic that you think, you know, anybody with a teen should focus on initially, what do you think that first topic should be?
Mm-hmm. So the first topic I think should be is you, right? Where can you, because you can't control your team, right? The first thing I would do is say, where could you make a change? Because if you're throwing a ball back and forth with someone, right? So say you and I, Scott, we're in a game and I'm throwing the ball and you're throwing the ball, we're going for it. It alters the game, right? If I choose to start speaking in a nicer tone to my teenager, it's going to change the game. Is it going to change the game that day? No. But if my teen walks in the door every day and snaps at me and I snap back, the next day when they walk in the door and snap at me and I don't snap back, change the game. You may not see the outcome of that change for a couple days, but you have the ability to change the game. And I think that's one of the things I love about some of these slides is that they're all in our control. None of us are waiting for our teens to change.
And I know this comes up a lot, you know, with the as you know, overseeing the counseling department and talking to kids is the cell phones. You know, having the restrictions on there. Again, how do you broach? I was wonder how would you broach that conversation if you had a 16, 17-year-old kid who's had free reign and access to their phone, and now, you know, after leaving this session, you make the recommendation, I think I should have a little more control. And how do you broach that subject? And especially, I know there's so many teens that share, like, you know, they're opening their phone 200, 300 times a day. They're connected to it. You know, some parents are even afraid to even broach the subject of taking their phone away from them in the slightest bit. what would you recommend to a parent in that situation?
Yep. So I liken it to, you wouldn't give with a shot of tequila, you would say, put that down, right? At the end of the day, we make really hard decisions for our kids every day. We can do this. We can tell our kids, our 16-year-old, you're not going to have your phone during the day at school. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? Our parents, and I know the answer already, we've become so afraid of what will happen if we tell kids no to this cell phone that we have lost control of it. We wouldn't let this happen anywhere else in their lives.
All right. Thank you so much, Kelly. That
You're
was
welcome.
a great response. And before we wrap up, I just wanted to say thank you so much for the presentation. For all the parents, we have it recorded. We will post it and share it. And just letting everybody know that this is the first part of a 6-part series that we're hoping to share. Well, not hoping to share, that we are intending to share. Our next session is going to be April 12th. That's going to be understanding teen anxiety and be part of the solution. Each of these sessions are going to be independent of each other, but they will have some overlap. So for any of the parents out there, if you miss one, or if somebody missed this first one, it's not like they're going to be completely lost and we're just moving forward. The idea is that we want to, have consistency and share some resources for parents on how to best deal, with any struggles that they have with their children, because it is difficult. Being a parent as well, I have 2 younger children. My daughter's in 5th grade, and like I think Kelly said earlier, she's 10 going on 18. So I could certainly appreciate the information and the strategy she's sharing, because as a parent, I'm sitting here knowing I'm going to be able to utilize these same strategies as well. But each of these sessions run independently, so we hope that over the next couple months, as we share these 6 sessions that really wrap up on June 7th, that we've been able to share some really awesome strategies, some really good conversations, and that the parents feel open to asking questions. If there are any other questions that any of the parents have, actually, we did have a question, then we didn't have a question. But if there's any of the questions that parents had, they can certainly email me at the school, and we'll be able to share them out. Kelly, we do have a question. I'm gonna Miss Souza.
Hi, can you hear
Hi.
me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So just going back to the point where sometimes you want to address things with your child, but they are kind of resistant and they're saying, like, I want more privacy, but at the same time, you want, because the child I'm talking about is 16, so you want to give them some privacy, but at the same time, you're a parent and your job is to keep them safe, like you said. But the teen that I have right now, they're really they want their own privacy, and they're really resistant to giving me any information when I ask, like, about their cell phone usage, etc.
So a couple of quick questions. Do you know how long they're on their phone during the day? Like, can you see that from your phone to theirs?
No, I don't have any parental control set up.
Okay. So that's the first thing I would say is, if you're going to have a phone, there's going to be parental controls on it. I mean, you wouldn't have a loaded gun in your house without a lock on it. You wouldn't have, liquor out in your house with a 17-year-old without it being locked up. I mean, there's just things that we would never do, right? To leave our 16, 17-year-olds, with free reign. So what I have, and actually I can probably show you this. So on my cell phone, it shows me, I don't know if anybody can see this or not.
It actually blurs out a little
It
bit because of the
does.
background.
Okay, so you can't see it. So when I click on my screen time, it actually shows me, because we were connected as a family on the cell phones, it shows me everybody's screen time. So at the very least, I can see how long they're on their phones. And that's also where I shut their phones off. Like that's where I have the ability to say, like, your phone is shut off from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. If I click into my son's cell phone on mine, it tells me which apps he's on. So part of what I kind of found out the hard way was that I was like not up on technology. Like my kids' understanding of technology vastly outpaced mine. And I actually sat down with somebody like at the iPhones at the Apple store and was like, show me how I figure out where my kids are. Because I mean, I have a friend who's in cybersecurity. She literally owns like a global cybersecurity company. And some of the things she was saying was like, how are we supposed to know this stuff? You know, like how am I supposed to know that he can even get on that, right? So the first thing I did was I educated myself. Once you educate yourself on the kinds of things you're trying to keep him safe from, you'll have an easier time keeping him safe, because you'll know, you'll be a little scared, to be honest with you. Like once I really understood what I was keeping my son safe from and why I had these parental controls, it's really not just about controlling your phone. I mean, there's literally safety concerns with some of the websites that they can go on, or apps and stuff like that. So the very first thing I did was make sure that my phone and his phone are connected and I can just see it.
Got it. Got it.
I'm not joking. I literally walked into the Apple store and said to some 20-year-old, please explain this thing to me. Like, please explain what my kids know that I don't know. And it was one of the most helpful things, because I didn't know what I didn't know. And at that point, I was sort of in the same camp as you, which was, I felt like I was sort of just saying like, because, right? Like, I need your phone because I need to be in your privacy because. No, really, there's some scary stuff happening. Like it's no joke.
Take out my math homework.
Thank you
Like,
for
I'm not
that.
trying to keep my kids safe from text messaging his friends. I'm not trying to keep my kids safe from Snapchatting his friends. I'm trying to keep
Right.
my kids safe from online predators.
Right.
That's a huge difference. Dude, I don't want to see that you're F-bombing your friends. Trust me, I don't want to see the conversation you're having with your buddies. Promise. Does that make more sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. What we'll do is we'll hang on for another couple minutes. If anybody has a question, but again, I want to thank Miss Canizone. Did a fantastic job. We will be posting this and we can share it out with everybody once it's uploaded. But thank you so much for attending. Have a great night. And like I said, any further questions, feel free to reach out to me at Wayne Valley. And our next session is going to be April 12th, where we talk about understanding teen anxiety. So thank you so much, Kelly. And thank you again to all the
You're
parents
welcome.
who joined us tonight. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you guys. Have a good night.